guys? Welcome back to another episode of Hard Fight History. I'm your host, Joshua Stokes, with my wonderful co-host, Henry Price.
Hey, how you doing?
And today, guys, we have a special. Well, I said special. What is going on with me? I said
Special,
we have a
wonderful.
special. We have a special
Mhm.
guest. The special, wonderful guest. He's the delightful Tre Tutson. Everybody, give it up
Hey,
for Tre
what's up?
Tutson.
All
Claps.
right, round
There's
of
no claps. I might
applause.
add claps. I'm not gonna add no claps for you, nigga. What's going on?
This
How you feeling?
motherfucker did energy snaps.
Well, you see, I got my coffee cup in one hand, so I can't clap, but I wanted to provide some kind of noise or energy, you know?
A lot of people ask me why I fuck with Henry. A lot of people ask me why I fuck with Henry. It's because he's so petty, and I love it. Niggas the
Oh yeah,
pettiest.
yeah. He is.
Oh man, oh yeah. I got a deep well of hatred deep in
Oh
my
yeah,
heart.
my boy
Okay?
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
my boy is. Yeah. So, if you guys don't know, the Tre Tutson is a wonderful comic from Houston, Texas. He is been in every. What you just was a finalist in the Sanford with the Seattle
Yeah, I
International
got third.
Comedy
Got
Competition.
third.
Sick.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Should have
thanks.
won. Should have won it all.
Should have
I'm a-
won. I lost
I'm
by
a-
half a point.
I'm gonna treat you like an uncle. I'm just disappointed unless you. I'm trying to live through you. Like I lost in that competition.
I lost too. That's
Okay.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So
Time of them.
no. So Tre, today we have brought you on to discuss, a topic, of importance, as I've just moved to Brooklyn because I'm cooler than you niggas now because I live in Brooklyn and I wear sweaters that are turquoise.
Oh, okay. I'll be
Yeah.
just as cool next month. But yeah.
I probably won't ever be cool.
No,
Even if I move to Brooklyn, it's gonna follow me like a cloud. Okay.
no, like it's wild because everybody up here just is Henry Price. It's
Oh.
wild.
I was gonna say
Wow.
you look like the banker
Wow.
that helped gentrify that
All
motherfucker.
right on.
All right. So do we want to Trey today? We're gonna talk about the Harlem Hellfighters. If you guys aren't familiar, the Harlem Hellfighters were an African American infantry unit in World War One who spent more time in combat than any other American unit. And despite their courage, sacrifice, and dedication to the country, they returned home to racism, segregation, and a lot of bad stuff. To put it lightly. So for this episode, I read a more unbending battle: the Harlem Hellfighters struggle for freedom in World War One and equality at home by Peter Nelson. It was pretty good. It's more. It goes into the depth about a lot of stories and ties in a lot of current events in America. But he does write like other like children's books also. So I'm always like, damn. But it was a pretty good book on the subject. The 360. So all right, for getting to the history of the 369th Regiment, or as they're known, the Harlem Hellfighters. It was formed from the National Guard's 15th Regiment in New York. Which was the state militia that back in the day helped suppress the 1863 New York City draft riots. And so
There's a interesting anecdote about the New York City draft riots. I read that it was a bunch of Irish people that were mad about, or they were mad basically that like black soldiers weren't eligible for the draft.
Why the fuck are they not fighting?
Exactly. And so they just fucking went crazy.
Yeah.
You know why? Because y'all only had to harvest potatoes, nigga. That's why.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's
I don't.
You know.
I don't know. My history's mixed up.
I mean, look.
I'm not sure on the years on that.
I'm not sure on them. So all right, so there were previous attempts like before the kind of World War One version of the 369th Regiment. There were also like previous attempts for like Harlem to raise its own like militia, like its own militia. There was a group called the Equity Congress that was like passing like kind of directives and like trying to build one, and it always got slapped down within like the New York State Congress or some shit like that. And then in 1910, William Hayward, who's a lawyer from Nebraska, moves his law offices to New York. He's like really tight with like Republicans, and he goes to Governor Whitman of New York, and he's like, I want to form a unit. And the agreement is he can form a black unit, but all the officers have to be white. he's like, I can't do that. So because like Harlem is black, he's like, that's not gonna work out. So he goes like, all right, all the field officers should be black. But then they're like, and there should be some older like officers from the 15th sprinkled in, and but all the higher up niggas is white.
Why they keep reinventing slavery?
It's not field off. I mean,
think
they are.
About it.
Yeah, that's
like, God damn! I mean, it's right there in your face. All of the hand field niggas. All right, it's like, what the? I mean, of course you gotta say no initially.
Yeah. So
it's like, come on, bro, we just got out of this.
Yeah, and this was looked upon as like, all right, we got a good compromise. Like,
these were considered like the progressives of the era, I guess, who were just like, I'll go along with this.
Like right. It was looked upon like if you served as a white dude and as an officer in this unit, it was like a little bit less distinguished. But the book made it kind of seem like you were like, oh, you kind of like I'm a good, I'm a progressive ass dude by doing this. It's like kind of a street cred, but it's not like like overall it kind of hurts you and like if I want to be a governor or some shit like that. Yeah, but like and they were like those white officers of privilege featured.
Ain't that fucked up?
Yeah,
to not be a governor because you wasn't racist enough.
Yeah, like that.
Like you wasn't quite racist enough.
Yeah, it was like this is a little bit of a ding to not be that. Did
you serve in
there's a guy. One of the officers is a guy named Hamilton Stuyvesant Fish, who is the son of a congressman and the grandson of a governor. And
3 fucked up names.
Yeah, Hamilton Stuyvesant Fish.
Hammy fish. That's what I would call Hammy. Good old Hammy fish.
Edgar Allan Poe it up, and you can't.
Mm-hmm. Hammy Fish will be like inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, so I don't think you would talk down to Hammy Fish.
Okay, right on. Hammy Fish.
Hammy Fish.
Hammy Fish would. Yeah, Hammy Fish. So and then one the most prominent member of the 369th is going to be James Reese Europe, or Jim Europe as he's called, born in 1880 in Mobile, Alabama, but raised in DC. He's an African American man. He followed his brother to Harlem in the early 1900s, and he's involved in the 53rd Street like kind of jazz movement in Harlem and plays at the Marshall Hotel, and it's like where all the black like jazz musicians played at the time. This is when like the black population didn't like really live in Harlem. They like actually lived like north of Hell's Kitchen, and they moved to Harlem like around 1910. I forget the reason why. I should have looked it up.
Probably a riot.
Yeah.
There was so we will actually, if we're gonna look at the riot-scape, there is this riot.
The riot scene.
We have a riot schedule we will go through later, and there is a 1900 riot of Hell's Kitchen. Of the Tenderloin district, and
get the fuck out.
Yeah, we're like they said 10,000 white people roam the streets just like attacking any black people they know, assisted by the police. I think it's depicted in like that HBO the one about there used to be an HBO like show
Lovecraft
about,
Country?
No, about like surgery in like the early 1900s. And like I think they kind of showed it. But all right, getting back to Jim Joe. Jim Europe, this is 53rd Street. This is where jazz is, because this is an area called San Juan Hill, I think is the area that all the black people live in at the time. He was a good jazz. He was a classically trained violinist who then like the gigs at the time he was playing like he would get these like these rich gigs where he'd be singing these plantation songs, minstrel stuff. He formed a band with a dude named Ernest Hogan, who wrote a song called "All Coons Look Alike." It's in 1910,
which is inaccurate. They all sound alike.
That's a Jesus.
They all sound.
Nigga got timestamp that one. Hold up. That's timestamp. Yeah, we have to reform it. Yeah, that's too much. All right, moving on. Oh, Jesus.
I'm just saying, motherfucker ain't never been called it by looks. It's been about the shit he's saying.
Okay.
I love it here, boss. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, all right. In 1910, all right, in 1910, when 125 musicians at Marshall Hotel wanted to form a union called the Clef Club, which is clever. The Clef Club.
Clef Lip Club?
No, the clef, like the.
I get you. Go ahead.
Music and
the clef note. I got it.
Yeah, and Jim Europe was elected president. In 1913, he meets this couple named Vernon and Irene Castle. They were known for like taking black vulgar dances and cleaning them up. That's like literally what they're known for.
All right, what is that?
And that's in terms of the dances, the foxtrot, the grizzly bear, the Texas Tommy, the tango, which was banned from the 1914 Yale junior prom. Yeah, the tango. So these are all the dances that they would like clean up and make.
And I'd like to see them dropped off in a club now. You know what I mean? If they're cleaning up all this shit that we think of as like wholesome almost, and now just be like, look what's happening now. Right now, we don't even dress it up anymore.
So he meets Vernon and Irene Castle. Vernon signs up for the Royal Flying Corps which is the British. He's a British citizen. He signs up for the RFC, and after the sinking of Lusitania in May 1915. This influences Europe to join in September 1916. They got like so much money together. They were like best friends. Vernon Castle would fine musicians for like saying the N-word. Like they was fined like $50, which at the time was like a crazy amount of fucking money.
It's a crazy amount of money.
Yeah. So like in they were racist because they were just cleaning up black dances, but like they just kind of treated them nice. So they kind of had this strong bond. He joins because of that, and he joins also because he's like always like propagated that people, young men need a strong organization to like train people. He also like started a group called the Frogs. He was a part of starting that. It was a society of artists and musicians and poets.
Are you sure the Frogs weren't French?
Okay.
So that wasn't a French organization?
You know
all right.
Don't feed into Henry's mania. You let that joke bomb. All right.
Oh, my bad. I apologize. No. I shouldn't have said nothing.
No. Okay.
Sorry, Henry.
It's all good. No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've been drinking wine. I just couldn't wait to do that French bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't wait to make railroad noises.
Okay. All right. Again, this is right before the Harlem Renaissance. As we know, this is right kind of after the fall. Like Garvey's in its fall right now.
What is Garvey?
I think he's like hitting his stride actually.
He did his
because
stride?
Like 1917 and early 1920s is when he
Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, that's when he goes and talks to the KKK, and that's when
that's when everybody's like, all right,
you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
Look, you're doing a lot.
We're talking about Marcus Garvey.
Garvey. This is like the heyday of Marcus Garvey. So So and there's also a lot of sentiment of people are just like, when people like go like, hey, you're gonna enlist? Are you gonna enlist? And people are like, yeah, the Germans have never done anything to me.
Yeah,
I live in America.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have that, like this. It's not, but there's also a side where people are like, oh man, this could help us. We could fight in this war, and which is I feel like happens every time, and it never works.
Never works. Yeah.
And so the people who joined joined the army. They were said to have joined the army because the band was so good that Jim Europe had that led the parades that the unit would do for recruiting drives. Because that at the time, this is the time before mass media. The only way they could recruit soldiers was through parades. And while doing these parades, they needed a great band. And Jim Europe created like the best jazz marching band of all time. And niggas will always say, hey man, I wouldn't be in the army if it weren't for that goddamn band. And that it persuaded them to basically join the parade, therefore joining and getting recruited into the army. This is within these like 2,000 men. They're people from they're men from like all walks of life. We have freshman 18-year-olds like Harry Powell, Walter Williams. We have a famous boxer like George Cotton. Spots Poles, the athlete that Paul Robeson, which is a famous black artist, would put on the same level as Jesse Owens. Was in the unit.
I didn't know Paul Robeson served. That's cool.
No, Paul Robeson wasn't in the unit, but he said Spots Poles was like an athlete on the same level as Jesse Owens.
Okay, I see.
But Spots Poles was in the unit. He got like a Purple Heart. Sergeant Gilliard, this is this guy who had like
Purple Heart. He should get that checked out.
I'm gonna let that bomb.
Okay, that one deserves it. Okay, that's fine.
There was Sergeant Gilliard, who had already crossed the Atlantic twice and had been sunk twice by German ships. There was Sergeant Bayard, who had reportedly been acquitted of 3 different murder charges.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you got it takes all types. You know what I mean? It takes all types. There was Private John Graham, who had been a shipping clerk. We're gonna move on from that Bayard, as you should mind your fucking business.
Yeah.
There was Needham Roberts, who was a bellhop and slash clerk, and was the son of a preacher. And then there was William Butler, an elevator operator from Salisbury, Maryland. And there was Robert Johnson, who was said to have joined because he was playing a crap game, and he vowed he was going to jump on the next train to Harlem if he hit his number. And yeah, so it took all types of people. All types of people were involved. The infantry was called to federal service on the 25th of July, 1917, at Camp Whitman in New York. After training, they kind of went into active duty in New York. They were kind of spread, like guarding rail lines and construction sites and other camps. And this was during a time of racial tension in America, particularly between troops, between like African American troops and like populations of towns, mostly because the towns were very racist. Like, and this is also within the backdrop of just 1900s America, which is like, again, there are race riots in the city of New Orleans. There was a race riot that we talked about in the Tenderloin district, where hundreds of thousands of white people kind of roam the streets, attacking black people. The incident was said to have been set off because there was like an undercover cop that basically checked out this like black dude's girl and made inappropriate advances. The cop thought she was soliciting, and or that's what he says. And then
after she said, "Fuck you, you're creepy."
Yeah,
he's like, "Oh, she was soliciting," and
so the Harris kind of the guy approaches the cop, and he's like, "What the fuck?" An argument ensues. The cop pulls out a billy club, hits the guy, and then Harris basically knifes the guy, knifes the cop, and then the cop died of the wound 7 days later. The black guy Harris fled to D.C., and then August 12th, there's rumors that circulating that the black community was heavily armed. And then on the day of the cop's funeral, there was rioting in Hell's Kitchen, and then for a couple of days, like thousands of white people with the city police, attacked virtually every black person they encountered. Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
And these people didn't even have COVID.
Yeah. There was a lot of people were injured. I think they left one black man dead. I think there's also a riot in New Orleans. There's riots in Springfield in 1904. Springfield, Ohio, 1904 and 1906 and 1921. Atlanta, Georgia has the Atlanta Massacre of 1906. There's going to be the Brownsville Affair, which involves the Texas Ranger, which involves like black troops in the town getting mistreated in Brownsville, Texas. They were accused of shooting up the town. Then that involves a Texas Ranger, Captain Bill McDonald. We talk about him on a Texas Ranger episode. He comes in there with all flair and gusto and like accuses these people, and they get acquitted later, but they get basically charged then. Springfield, 1908. Omaha, Nebraska. This is just a different type of riot in 1909 in Greektown, where they basically disappeared an entire part of a Greek town entire Greek part of like Omaha, Nebraska. In 1910, there are the Johnson Jeffrey riots after Jack Johnson wins against Jeffries. Yep. 1917, you have the East St. Louis riots, which is actually the most dangerous or the most violent of all. I think it's worse. It's worse than Tulsa. 1970, you have Chester. The 1917, you have Philadelphia, and then in 1917 you have Houston, Texas, the Houston riot, which is like, I don't know. The Houston riot is interesting because it's just troops, some like African American troops who've been enlisted, who've been drafted in the World War One, basically see a black girl being mistreated by the cops. They kind of try to they try to like say what's going on basically, and then the cops fucking turn and try to beat the shit out of them. They go back to the barracks and niggas like, oh, we're not gonna have this. They go with guns to the city hall.
Yeah.
Like to the police department or wherever, and then there's like a shootout and it's like a bunch of shit, and like it's a deadly riot, and it's basically it's a
I miss shootouts.
Yeah.
Like all this shit you saying sounds dope. Like now, just think about now.
Yeah.
A shootout. And we didn't show up marching and
people
gas, and we showed up.
There's a weird history. I think I've heard various black people in my life be like, oh, you know, if slavery happened or such and such, Jim Crow, I would not today because I would do this or that. People don't realize they did all that. Like they did all of that shit. There's various examples of them doing all that stuff. Like that shit all happened. Like like so, and a lot of those people end up getting, like 1917, a lot of those soldiers end up getting lynched. That's just they end up hanging.
That was the end result.
Yeah. So within this context, the 369th, the Harlem Hellfighters, are in Harlem, and they're going to be sent to Camp Wadsworth in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where they were going to receive combat training. Like Camp Wadsworth was like set up like actual French like trench battlefields. And it was just like the people in Spartanburg were very racist, and basically a lot of the Harlem Hellfighters were just basically had to kind of bear with stuff. There's one incident where Lieutenant James Reese Europe, which is Jim Europe, and his like band leader, one of his top right hand mans in his band, Noble Cecil, they refused to they just wanted to buy a paper out of a hotel. They wouldn't sell it to them, and there was like kind of a big hubbub because they're also members of the 27th Infantry, which is like a New York National Guard organization that was training at the same time. They're white guys, but they're also like, hey, they're our buddies, and we won't buy from people who treat them unfairly. Like, and they were ready to go and kind of amping up stuff because they were like, we're from all from New York, we can fuck them up. It's like the black guys like, I don't know, you want to do that, and they're trying to keep it. Also, it's weird because those people are from New York, and they're also it's like 17 years removed from the New York race riots, and they're described in the book as being from like the similar place as where those riots took place. It's just weird. Like, okay, but they're Southern. That it's different. Okay, on 27th December 1917, they ship out for France. Basically, they were given like labor service duties in France, and then before being assigned like a combat role. So the kind of leader of all American troops in France is Jack Pershing. He's a person that served with the Buffalo Soldiers, and the person that was over the Buffalo Soldiers in like the kind of Americans kind of confrontations with Pancho Villa that are happening along the border in like 1914. So, which is also interesting history. I think about the Buffalo Soldiers actually like. I don't know if I want them fighting Pancho Villa, or I don't know much about that conflict, but it's just interesting to think about kind of soldiers, black soldiers, like kind of in a Wild West kind of, but they also have machine guns and it's a weird thing. Yeah. So World War I up to that point, it was fucked.
Is it weird that the only lens I have into like 19 teens Mexico? Pancho Villa insurrection. The only context I have on any of that is what I see on hot sauce bottles.
That is, I mean, that's just how. I mean, that's capitalism.
The symbol has been appropriated, right?
That's
marketed in a
I don't know if that's just like what do they call those guys? They call those guys. I forgot they call the like group
desperados.
That's just like a rurales almost. That's what they're like. That kind of like military kind of rurales kind of look.
Always I don't know if that straps. Always
the straps. That's the rurale style from like kind of northern Mexican like militia kind of vibes. So World War I up to this point fucking sucked. The Somme, Verdun. We can go over all the tropes about World War I: the trenches, the rats, the shelling, the tunneling. The tunneling is particularly scary to me. Just the idea that motherfuckers would tunnel under you and then put a bomb under you. And then that's how they would start an attack, and that they just blew up your lines, and you had to listen. People are always listening to the ground. Like, that's shovels. That fucking Yeah, that's a lot.
Like a Jack in the Box of death.
Yeah, the gas. Was it racism that sent the 369 to the French lines? I think it was partially the Americans would not cooperate with an American, like with a Black American unit. Americans were like the other white American units were not cooperative. Also, the French were way more receiving of Black troops. They already had the Senegalese, the Moroccans, the Algerian. They already had African troops that have been fighting with them for years. Yeah, the book kind of, yeah, let's gonna move on from that one.
I don't really know because my World War I history is not great.
Yeah.
Where else feasibly could they have been sent? Like what other fronts were being fought on?
So with France, I mean, the France is pretty much diehard into the French. Kind of interior.
From what I understand, they're receiving the brunt of it, right?
Yeah,
right next to Germany as it is.
Yeah, they're already having these people fight for them. There's also, but I mean, there's African battlefields.
Yeah,
around like French colonies.
Like Cameroon.
Yeah, there's also like I'm pretty sure there's like World War One, like Asia, Indochina stuff. But I'm pretty sure, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is pretty much where they're gonna go from Senegal to northern France in a trench. Yeah, they were basically the 369th were incorporated into French units. They were given French helmets. They were given French everything. There's also a thing where the American officers, the black troops were like they're sending us here because they're just throwing us as the cannon fodder. And I think that is a real idea, and I think that is was also a feeling of the time, and also some of those higher officers directive. That's how they felt, but I think it's a variety of feelings. Yeah, so they get sent to the French units. They get sent to the French front. They get trained by French people. They are basically in these French units that already have like Moroccan and Senegalese troops. Since there was already a manpower shortage because the French at the time, the French had just mutinied. There was a large mutiny of troops that was happening in terms of French.
Because of Russia?
No, I don't. I know that from a cursory World War I documentary. I don't have I have to go back into that. All right, and so they got treated pretty well by the French. The French didn't have the kind of racism that the Americans had. Even so much that there was a French colonel was forced a French colonel was forced by Americans to write a book that warned French civilian authorities of the alleged inferior nature and supposed racist tendencies of African Americans. It was called the Secret Information Concerning Black American Troops. It was a pamphlet. Yeah, they were at this time. Also, the Harlem Hellfighters, even though they're American troops, they were notorious for wearing French helmets, which are shitty. I feel like they're a little bit shittier. They get into combat as part of the French 16th Division.
We covered why. Is it just because there was there supply lines issues, or was it just that the U.S. Army? Didn't we say this in one of the previous episodes that the U.S. Army was just yeah, we don't have any helmets for them. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't. They had French everything. They were equipped with. They only kept the American uniforms. The book probably talked about it. Yeah,
when you go to your cousin's house.
Yeah, it does. It's a very the French were demanding troops. They're we need troops, and they're we need American troops to reinforce French divisions. And there's also the Americans being nah, nigga. But we do have these black troops that we can give you into your fucked up armies. And also American officers don't trust French.
Yeah.
They don't trust that because the French are losing this war. They're the worst at this.
And meanwhile, Woodrow Wilson is landing troops in northern Russia as well. So he's more concerned about observing the Russian situation than he is with helping out the French.
That's the whole thing. I'm looking over that book about Lenin. We'll talk about that later. It served continuously to about July the 3rd, and it was before returning to combat in the Second Battle of the Marne. I don't know, man. It was just it was like in a bunch of battles. It like got fucked up a lot. It like covered a lot of the like 20% of the American terrain was basically covered by them. 20% of all American the land held by American troops was covered by this one unit. So the most famous probably incident is going to be Private Henry Johnson and Robert Needham's. They were like at a forward operating post, and basically they encounter a patrol of 24 Germans. Basically, they're fighting off the patrol. Needham is injured. Needham is wounded pretty badly by like a grenade. And then Johnson basically fights off a bunch of the Germans. I think he kills about, what is it? How many? It's like 4 or 5. He killed 4 German soldiers, and it's suggested he wounded another 30, and he sustained at least 21 injuries. Yeah. So, and it was like a thing where he got like cut on like both of his like calves and shit. Like he had been shot a bunch of fucking times.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I'm gonna like 21 injuries.
Yeah, he like
knives and guns. So they did have guns, and they were just he was being shot.
Yeah,
but he's not going down.
He's not going down.
I'm here to hack all of you to death.
Yeah, at a point he stops shooting and he pulls out his bolo knife, and he's just fucking hacking the fuck away. He said he like, I don't know if I think it was this incident where he like drove the shit so far down somebody's skull, like he like hit one dude like was coming at him with a pistol, and he hit him over the head, and like the dude spoke basically perfect English, like the black son of a bitch got me, and then he passed out, and then that same dude came after him, and then he killed that fucking dude. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's that guy's fault for running at him with a gun, right?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It was just like that was the Needham Roberts Henry Johnson. I'm not doing enough justice, but he gets a lot of medals for it. Let's put it that way. The unit gets a lot of French decorations.
Yeah.
Among those, Johnson was the first one to receive the Croix de Guerre. I don't know how to say that word. It's a high medal in French. Okay, I refuse.
I've been brushing up.
No, I know you've been getting ready for Napoleon. On January 19th, the regiment went offline for rest and the training replacements. Also, you're gonna have Jim Europe, who the band leader, he like was in a machine gun squad at first, but then they had promoted him to lieutenant. He leads the band. He does some time at the front, but not that much. He is like, this is stupid. I'm gonna go play music, and crushes he basically is responsible for bringing jazz to Europe. Before that, jazz they didn't exist in Europe, and he was the band was going around and was playing with all these other different regimental bands. They were playing French music, like the national songs, but they were playing it like in jazzy ass ways. And French people were like, "Oh shit,
this is pretty dope."
They're like, "Oh shit, yeah." They're like, "We fuck with this a lot." So basically, he is responsible for bringing jazz to Europe. The 369th is it's instrumental in the drive on Meuse in the Argonne. They at one point the 369th it was advancing faster than any French troops. They took about 14 miles, which in like terms of World War I was usually like land taking was usually measured in like feet and like yards, hundreds of yards, rather than like 14 miles. In mid-October, they were then sent to the Vosges, which is like the quiet sector, and then on 11th of November, which is going to be Armistice Day, that's when the war ends. And then after that, a couple days later, on November the 26th, they're the first American unit to reach the Rhine after the war, which is like a big thing at that time. Yeah, they said
there's this other movie on Amazon that's really bad called The Great War.
Yeah,
it was released in 2019 too, which was kind of surprising. I did not watch all of it, but I could not.
Yeah,
just because it was like poorly written and there was a bunch of weird shit in it. It was basically like a white savior movie.
Yeah,
where like the 369th is stuck behind enemy lines. at the Rhine, and there's like a whole bunch of white officers and whatnot that need to go and like rescue this unit. But it was just so weird that it would be like, why are you telling this story in 2019? You know, you could just write a movie about the Harlem Hellfighters.
Yeah.
And it would do really well.
It would,
and you could make a lot of money off of that, and you could do the story justice because it is a great story. But instead, it was still couched in terms of like,
the
white troops need to go save the black ones, and it was like, that's not accurate.
Yeah, the Arthur W. Little, who was like a battalion commander in 369th, he said it was official that the outfit was 191 days under fire, never lost a foot of ground or had a man taken prisoner, and on 2 occasions men were captured but never recovered, and only once did it fail to reach its objective, and that was due largely to the bungling of like French artillery support. So that's Arthur Little's opinion. And fire facts. The French artillery support seems like probably true. We don't know. You gotta give everybody. And then so they come basically. They had fought in a bunch of battles, got a bunch of medals, and then they come home.
Regiment's like 20,000, right?
Yeah, regiment's not like 20,000. That's like a division. The regiment's like 1,000 people, from my understanding.
Oh, okay.
A company's like 200. No, that's fine. I don't know. Maybe a few thousand, 2,000, something like that. I don't know. They had suffered about 1,500 casualties, the highest of any U.S. regiment also. So eventually they start on the way home. There's an anecdote about when they take a train to Brest, France, and they were like, they're doing these chants about like, who won the war? We won the war, because it's 1918 and they still are. It's 1919 at this point, and they're still not good at like chants. You know what I mean? And like there's like an MP that like they're like, who won the war? And like this white MP like cracks somebody over the head just for no. And like when they asked the white MP why he did it, this white American MP was like, yeah, they're filling their oats a little bit too much. In that,
getting cocky.
Yeah, and that's the basically
fighting in the war.
The initiation into what happens for what will happen going here forward. For that, they get there's the grand parade. This is at the end of the war, the 17th of February, 1919. Unofficial holiday in Harlem. A lot of school children are released from school. They're dismissed so they can attend. Starts on Fifth Avenue at 61st Street, which is uptown on 110th Street. Turns on the Lens Avenue into Harlem, and where like Black New Yorkers packed the sidewalks to see them. It became a marker for African American service to the nation, and it was seen as the unofficial start of the Harlem Renaissance. Now, how do all these people end up after their service in the war? Hayward, the guy who kind of starts to do the guy over the unit, becomes a district attorney in New York and marries the widow of a well-known financier. His son Leland Hayward becomes a Hollywood talent agent who worked with like Fred Astaire, Judy Garland, Jim Stewart, Harry Fonda. It's all like old Hollywood.
So he's the son of a bitch who messed up my girl Judy.
Maybe he's probably.
What you're telling me?
He's probably involved.
He exploited Judy Garland.
Maybe
William Hayward's son got Judy Garland hooked on amphetamines.
Don't ever trust a man named Leland. That's what you never do.
I'm in agreement. Yeah, it's never gone well, right?
Boy, all right. Hamilton Fish lives to be 101.
Oh, Hammy Fish.
Dying in 19. Yeah.
That's fucking crazy, man.
Dying in 1991, College Football Hall of Fame. His son became a congressman. Needham Roberts, the man that Robert Johnson saved and held off that 24-man German patrol. He, that's what I think he has a variety of jobs. Ends up being slightly, not officially, but like about to be accused of sexual misconduct with some. I think it was a younger lady. Or somebody like that, and then him and his wife commit suicide. I think him and his wife commit suicide. And then Henry Johnson. Yeah. It's just like
a weird. She was legit ride or die. She was like, I am committed
100%. All right.
Yeah, it's Henry Johnson, the hero of kind of the 369th. He came home. He's like a big hero. Everybody likes him. He's sent on a War Department tour, but Henry Johnson is a real nigga, and he don't care about none of this shit. At the St. Louis Coliseum speech, he was just telling, he was saying they put him in front of a bunch of black people. He was just like, they was out there like, send the niggas to the front so there won't be nothing in New York. And he was like angry. He got carried out on shoulders by the black contingent, but they didn't let him speak no more on no more tours. And then that night, white Marines showed up to his hotel room, and the white Marines were like, "Is Henry Johnson here?" And they didn't know what he looked like. He just showed up in a robe. He's like, "Henry Johnson is out." They closed the door and they went away thinking that he wasn't there. He has a wife and the kids, and he starts drinking heavily, and then he was thought to be on drugs, and he dies by 1929. Jim Europe Jim Europe is performing jazz, and is getting bigger and bigger gigs, and then he has an incident, a run-in at the Boston Theater with this guy named Herbert Wright, who basically Herbert Wright basically was like paranoid, almost schizophrenic, or maybe he was getting wrongly like fucked somehow. Was like thought that Europe was taking advantage of him. There's a confrontation in a dressing room, and Herbert pushes him away, and Europe pushes Herbert away. Herbert does like a back fling with his fucking knife, cuts him in the neck. Everybody's like, "That's fine. We survived wars. I'm talking to you." He dies. He bleeds out and dies. Yeah. So, and this leads into the summer of 1919, which is the summer that they all got all these black soldiers got back from World War I that served in World War I, in units like the 369th or the 370th or the 371st or the 372nd. And they get back, and then this is the summer of the Red Summer, as it's called, where there are race riots in Washington, D.C. There's the Chicago race riot. There's the Omaha race riot of 1919. There's the Charleston race riot, Longview race riot, Knoxville race riot. The Elaine race riot. It's called race riot here, but I think that you can define it as the Elaine, Arkansas like massacre, where there's like hunting of black people. The Okie, Florida massacre in 1920. The Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. I'm not sure about the Okie. I don't know about that one. I just include that one. Scratch that one. I don't know. And then the Springfield, Ohio race riot, and also the 1923 Rosewood massacre. But then you start to see these kind of legends of like black resistance pop up. Specifically in 1921, you got the ABB, which is like I can't find a lot of facts on this, but there's like kind of desperate articles or like stuff in books about the ABB, especially that Marcus Garvey book. The ABB being this organization in the Tulsa massacre that was like a secret covert organization of black World War I troops. And that like at the Tulsa massacre, there were two parts of the neighborhood. There was the back and there was the front. The back was like the part of the neighborhood where a lot of people got burned in their homes and like a lot of shit happened. And then the front was the part near the railroad where there were snipers set up from those black troops. And they set up snipers and were like shooting and were clapping white people. And like apparently there was like there was like a church blown up. And the reason why it was blown up because there was so much ammunition in it that would have been stockpiled. Like so, and maybe this and this kind of seems like it's kind of continuing a tradition, not starting but continuing a tradition of black militancy that's like from the Black Seminoles through to through the kind of we're going to talk about Texas State Police or any of the stuff kind of Reconstruction era. Black people didn't always take racial violence on stride, and just like no, a lot of times they shot back and maybe this is some of those World War I troops feed into that militancy. But yeah, that's the history of the 369th Harlem Hellfighters in a broader history of World War One African American service in contemporary events. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being here, Tre. Thank you for being on the podcast. How'd you enjoy it? Did you like it?
Yeah, this was like it. I didn't know anything about any of this, and it was dope to sort of. It was dope. You know what it was? It was actually dope to sort of label this thing that I knew happened, but I didn't know the story that was attached to it. I knew guys went to war and came back and were mistreated, which was why some dudes left, I believe, in World War II and just never fucking came back.
Yeah.
It's like the hell with it. Like,
so
this, I kind of knew about this thing, but didn't really know, how to how you say?
Like contextualize it.
Contextualize it. Like,
it's
like what is
in this various incidents, as I think it should say, of those black troops in uniform being mistreated by white populations and getting murdered for having their uniforms on in towns, getting tied up to trees and shot 50 times. Like all types of shit. Oh, this nigga thinks he's cocky because he came back from the war and he would be murdered for that.
The story in the documentary is that one troop had his uniform on, was getting on a train in Alabama or something, and like the conductor or some white dude asked him like, "Hey, can you take your uniform off?" Basically, just asking him to be on the train naked, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna wear it." And then they like lynch him.
Yeah. There's something about the book anecdote about them tying a dude up to a tree and shooting him 50 times because he has uniform on. To like white dude.
Damn.
White woman told like basically I think it's a sidewalk incident. I might be, but there's like you're on the sidewalk. It's like I'm not gonna step onto the side. I have my uniform on, and then so like stuff like it's just like boom, 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 and that's within the of 1919 and just like Chicago riot, where it's like hundreds of people are killed.
And those are the troops I support.
Huh? Which Tre Tutson, hard fight history, forever. Tre, where can I follow you at?
At Tre Tutson on everything, everything. TRETUTSON.
Oh, you guys can follow me, Joshua B. Stokes, on Instagram and Twitter. Henry, where can they follow you at?
You know me. I'm just Henry Price, man.
Yeah,
I'm just out here.
I'm just
doing weird shit. All right.
He's just
plotting in the darkness. Okay.
He's just skulking in the shadows, ready to take it on. No.
What's your next shit, Henry? What you got up next? Napoleon?
Yeah, we're gonna do him soon. We're gonna do Women's History Month, and then after Women's History Month, we're gonna do Napoleon because we're going to Paris in early April. So I want to read as much as I can about France before we go. I'm excited.
We got a lot of good stuff coming up. A lot of exciting stuff. Alice Lakwena. We got Roberto Minshew. We got a lot of good stuff coming up. We'll see you. Everybody have a happy Wednesday.
Be safe.
Be safe out
right?
there.
Huh? Yeah.
We love you. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.